it's Jordan Teen 1, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make these adorable Amigurumi or Loomigurumi M&Ms. So you can see I have a girl and a boy here, and I will be showing you how to make the girl, but it's really easy to do either one with this pattern. The only difference is the girl has more white on her legs because she wears boots where the boys wear these little shoes or sneakers. And then the mouth is different. But other than that, they're the same pattern. So you can really do any color M&M that you like. And as far as their size goes, they stand about 5 inches tall, give or take. And their legs are nice and bendy, so if you wanted to, you could sit them up somewhere. They would probably have to lean against something in the back, but it should work out pretty well to have them sit on a shelf or something. And then as far as your band counts go, I tried to get an accurate count, but I could be off a few, give or take. If you're going to be making the girl like I'll be showing, you need about 485 of the green bands, and then you'll need 138 white, 50 of the beige or the skin tone, 8 black bands for the eyebrows, and then about 18 bands for the mouth, which I use dark green for. And then if you're going to make the boy, you're going to need 122 white bands, and then 66 of the beige or the skin tone. And then for the eyebrows and the mouth, you'll need about 18 black rubber bands. And then as far as their eyes go, I used these googly eyes, and I found ones that I thought worked out really well because they had eyelashes on them, so that worked perfectly for the girl. But for the boy, I couldn't find any with the color that did not have eyelashes, so what I did was I used red nail polish, and I put a couple of coats of that over top of just this top half where the red is to cover up the eyelashes. So if you wanted to, you could use rubber bands to make the eyes. I just personally like the look of the Google eyes better. The first thing that I'm going to show you how to make is the foot and the leg. So we're going to begin by making a magic ring, and that's going to wind up being the toe part here. And I am going to be showing it by using a twisty tie just to get it started. So you don't have to have this, I just find it a little bit easier. So I'm just going to take my twisty tie and put it up against my hook. Just line it up with the end there. I'm going to take one single white band and I'm going to triple this. So I'm just putting it on, twisting, putting it back on, twisting, and putting it back on. So you have the 3 loops on there. And then I'm just going to pull this about halfway and bend it in half. And now we have 5 bands left here that we're going to be putting in the center of the magic ring. So I'm just going to take one at a time. I'm going to pull it through, get it back on my hook, and then pull one end through the other to make a slip knot. And then I'm always going to be working from front to back. So you can work from back to front if you want, but you just have to stay consistent with that. But I'm going to always be doing front to back here. So I'm pushing in and I'm going through all 3 bands. That's why this is helpful, to make sure you're getting through all 3. Taking the second one, you want to pull it through, back on your hook so you have 3 loops, and then the one on the end slides through the other 2. So you're going back through that center. You're going to pull through your next band, get both ends on your hook. Again, you're always going to have 3, and the end one pulls through the other 2. So I have 2 bands left here. So I'm just repeating this process again. One slides through the 2, and then I have 1 more left here, and the end one slides through the others. So now I can take my twisty tie out, and you can see how the bands are pretty much on the bottom half here. So you just want to take a second and spread these out. Get them pretty much evenly spaced around this circle here. And then what I'm going to do is take a clip and I'm going to put it on the band that's on my hook, and I'm going to be using this as a stitch marker here. So I have an S clip. You can use a C clip, you can use an actual stitch marker, whatever you have available. In the second row, you're going to need a total of 8 rubber bands, and we're going to be following the pattern of 2 1 2 1 2. So what that means is in the first stitch, and let me show you what I mean by a stitch. You can see here we have our band that is on our hook. That's the last one in that row. And if you look over to the left, you'll see like a sideways V, and that's what I'm calling a stitch. Let me just put my hook in through it so you can get a better look at it. It has 2 loops, a back loop and a front loop, and you're always going to want to go through both unless otherwise noted. So when you have 2, that means you're putting 2 single crochet in this same stitch. So it'll be one at a time. So I've gone in through the front. I'm going to grab my first band, pull that through, get the other end back on my hook, so now you have 3 loops and 1 pulls through the other 2. So that's what's called a single crochet, and now I need to go through that same stitch again and pull through the second band, back on my hook, and then the end one pulls through the other 2. So when you have more than 1 single crochet in a stitch, that's going to make it increase in size, so that's why we're doing this. So now when we move over to our next stitch, you're going through both of those loops, and we have just 1 band for this. So it's always going to be that same single crochet pattern. And then in the next stitch here, you can see we have 2. So you're doing 1 and then going back through the same stitch for the second. And then in the next one, we're going to have just 1 band. And then finally in the last stitch, there's going to be 2. And our last stitch should always be where the clip is. So I'm pulling through 1, and then I'm going back through the same stitch. Again, make sure you're going under both loops, and I'm going to pull through a second. Sorry, my clip is in the way, and the end goes through the other 2. So once you've completed that, you're going to take your clip off and then move it to the band that's on your hook, so we know that was the last one in that row. In rows 3 and 4, you're going to need 8 bands for each of those rows, and we're just going to do 1 single crochet in each of the stitches. So I'll do the first one with you here. So I'm moving to this next stitch over to the left, making sure I'm going through both of the loops. Just doing that 1 single crochet, moving to the next, again 1 crochet. So this part's pretty straightforward with 1 in each. So when you make your way around here, your last band should be going through the stitch that has the clip on it. So you can see we have 2 left. And now my last stitch here with a clip, I'm going to go through that. And then you want to move your stitch marker or your clip to the band that's on your hook. And then we're just going to continue around to do row 4. So I'm just going to this next stitch over, and again it's going to be 1 in each. So it does kind of want to close up a little bit when you're working on it. So if you're having a hard time seeing your stitches, you can just sort of pull this open just to get a better view of what you're doing. And so again, that last band is going to be going through the stitch with the clip on it. So if that all lines up, then you know you didn't make any mistakes anywhere. And I have one band left, and I have my last stitch here. And then the last thing is to move the clip. In row 5, you're going to need 12 white rubber bands, and I have them laid out. We're going to be doing 3 single crochet, 1 in each of the stitches, and then in the 4th and 5th stitch, you're going to need 3 bands for each of those, and I'm going to show you how to do a puff stitch for those so we can expand that heel, and then the last 3 are going to be single crochet. So you're just going to go around like normal, go to your next stitch, and we're going to do a single crochet, and then in the second stitch again a single crochet, and then the same for the third. Whoops, I didn't make it through there. And now for this next one is going to be our first puff stitch. So for that I'm going to just go through the next stitch, take my first band, pulling it through, and I'm getting the other end back on my hook, and I'm just leaving those 3 loops on there. Then I'm going to hold those with my finger, and I'm going to go back through that same stitch again, take a second band, pulling that through and getting it back on my hook. So at this point you should have 5 loops on your hook, and then you should have 1 band left that's going to pull through all of these. So I would recommend as you're pulling that through, if you pull down on the main part, it sort of helps your hook not to get too caught up on the other bands. So now you're down to 2 loops, and again you want to hold those with your finger and go through the next stitch. We're going to do our second puff stitch, so I'm going to pull through 1 band, get it back on my hook. So this time I have 4 loops. Pull them back, go through again, pull through that second band, so now I have 6 loops, and now with this third band, again I'm going to pull down on these just slightly to help my hook glide through there. Get the other end back on, and you're back down to the 2 loops. So you can see how much more lengthened that is here in the back. And now I have 3 single crochet, so I'm just going through like a regular single crochet, and you'll notice that you do have 4 loops on here where normally you have 3, but you're just taking that end one and going through the other ones on your hook, and then the next stitch over is a single, and then you should have 1 left that's going to go through your clip, or the band that your clip is on, I should say. And then you're just going to move that clip up. Row 6 is a repeat of row 5, so you're going to need 12 rubber bands, and we're doing the same stitches. The only thing that's going to be a little different is we're going to tack it to the top of the foot to make the bend. So you're just going to your next one over here, and I'm going through the regular stitch, but then what I also want to do is to go through another band or 2 on top of the foot. So I'm going to try and keep it sort of straightforward from where the stitch is. You might have to go a little bit sideways, but I'm just going to go through some more bands here. Take my band and pull it through, going through all of the loops, getting it back on, and doing that regular single crochet. So you can see how that's drawing that forward there. And then I'm going to the next one over, and just make sure you're going through the right one. It sort of looks like I need to go through this stitch here, but you can see we actually did already go through that. It's just being pulled over to the right a little bit more. So I'm going to this next stitch. Again, I'm going to pull through some of these bands at the top. So I'm going through all but the last one on my hook, putting it back on, and then this draws through the other two. And now for the next one, I'm going to do just a regular single crochet. So again, this is sort of stretching this stitch out, so just make sure you're going through the correct one. So I'm going to this next one over, and this is also a single crochet. And now I'm on to where the puff stitches are. And so you can see here, there should be a nice stitch right on top of the puff stitches. And we're just going to do another puff stitch on top of where the previous one was. So we're pulling through one band, going back through for a second band, and then that third band is pulling through all of the ones on my hook. Whoops, I didn't quite make it on there. And now again, I'm going on top of the second puff stitch, going through that top stitch, and I'm going to form another puff. So I'm pulling through one, back through for a second, and then the third one is going through all 6 loops. And now I should have 3 singles left. And so I'm moving to the next stitch. And again, you have 4 loops on your hook at this point. You're pulling that end one through the other 3. And now for this next one, I'm going to again tack it to the front of the foot. So I went through the stitch, and then I'm going to go grab some other bands that are a little bit in front of that. Pull that next band through those, back on and through the other 2. And then I have 1 stitch left here. That's where my clip is. Let me just take this clip off so you can get a better view. And again, I am going to tack this and pull through. I'm going to attach my clip here. So now you might just want to take a minute here and sort of shape this the way you want it to be. In the back where the puff stitches are is going to be the heel. For rows 7, 8, and 9, we're going to be doing 1 single crochet in each of the stitches. And so I'll do the first row with you, and then I'll let you complete the other 2 on your own. And let me just point out that I am making the girl, so all of my bands are white. But if you're making the boy M&M, you only want the first row to be white, and then your other 2 rows would be a beige or a skin color. So let me just get this back on my hook. So we're just going to continue around with 1 single crochet in each stitch. And it might be a little bit harder to find the stitches this time, just because with it being tacked, it's pulled a little bit tighter. So if you look here at the top, you can see this first stitch, but it looks like we did already go through that one. Even though you can see it's being pulled off to the right side, we definitely did go through that one. So I need to move over to the left here. It looks like it's too far over, but it's definitely the right one. Gonna do my regular single crochet. And then I'm going to this next stitch. Now this looks a little bit small because it's being pulled, but that's the next stitch we want to go through. And then we should have one more before the puff stitch. And now we should be on top of the 2 puff stitches, but there should be a nice stitch on top of each of those. So here's the first one, and then the second. And then coming around here, this will be our next one. And I have 2 bands left, so I should have 2 stitches left. So here's the next stitch. And then finally where my clip is going to be the last. And then I can move the clip here. So you should be getting sort of like a nice little boot or a foot shape. As I said, you kind of have to like push this forward, move the heel up, but overall it should be looking like a foot. So then you would continue with rows 8 and 9, doing 1 single crochet in each of these stitches. So I'm just going to let you pause your video and do that now. In rows 10, 11, and 12, you're going to be doing 1 single crochet in each stitch, so you have 8 for each of the rows. So we are changing color here, so what you're going to need to do is a slip stitch. So what you do is go in your next stitch like normal, and you're taking your color here, you're pulling it through, but instead of putting it back on your hook like normal, what you're going to do is pull it through the white band that's on your hook and then get it back on. Pull one end through the other to make a slip knot. So we do that in order to try and keep the same colors next to each other. And then you're just going to go around here with the rest of the bands. So we already went through this stitch, so you're moving over to the left. So again, it's just 1 in each every time. And then I have 2 left here. And then here's my last one. And I'll move the clip. So I'm just going to go ahead and let you finish the last 2 rows on your own here. But I would like to point something out here as far as the slip stitch goes. If you look here on the top where we made our slip stitch, it sort of looks like 2 little half stitches. There's the white and then there is the beige color or the skin color. And that can be misleading because you may think you need to go through this little stitch. You can see here that we're already through the white part, but you may think that this little beige half stitch is your next one. But that is just formed from us doing that slip stitch, so you don't want to go through that. So it's actually this next one over that you're going through to place your next single crochet. And then you would just follow around like normal. Once you have your 1 foot and leg made, you need to go ahead and make a second one. So I'm not going to film this just for the sake of time, but I will add the time to go back to in the tutorial if you feel like you need to follow along with the steps again. So the hand is going to start the same way as the foot. You're going to have 6 white rubber bands, and we're going to do a tripled band that's going to go around the twisty tie and the hook. So you're just twisting it and putting it back on until you have the 3 loops. I'm just going to pull this up and bend it in half. And now I have 5 more bands that I'm going to pull through. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1 more. And now I can take this out. And then again, you're just going to try and spread these around, even them out a little bit. For row 2, you're going to need 8 white rubber bands, and we're following the pattern 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So it's starting the same way that the foot did. In this first stitch, you're going to need to place 2 single crochet. So this is the first one, and then back through that same stitch for the second. And then in the next stitch over, it's just 1. Moving on to the next, you have 2. And then 1 for the next stitch. And then finally in the last stitch where the clip is, you're going to have 2. And then move your clip. In rows 3 and 4, you're going to need 8 bands for each row, and it's going to be 1 single crochet in each of the stitches. So I'm just working my way around here. And if you feel like you're having a hard time seeing your stitches, don't hesitate to pull this open so you can get a better view at what you're doing, because it does tend to want to close up on you a little bit when you start doing these full rows of single crochet. So now here's my last one. And I'll move the clip. And then the same thing for row 4. I'm just going to let you do that one on your own, so you can pause here. You'll need 12 white rubber bands for row 5 because we're going to add the thumb piece. So you're going to start doing your regular single crochet in each. So I'm going to do that for the first 6. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. And now I'm going to take my hook and go through the next stitch. But for right now, I'm just going to leave that on there. So I have the 3 loops on my hook. I'm going to push it down to the base. And I'm going to make the thumb. So for that, I want to take one band and triple it. So I'm just twisting and putting it back on until I have the 3 loops. And then I'm going to take another band and triple that. And then I'm going to take 2 additional bands, and I want those 2 tripled bands to slide onto these 2. So I'm just going to put them on the hook together, and then you're probably going to have to use your fingers from your other hand and slide these on. So it may be a little bit awkward to do. Just going to slide the first tripled band on, and then the second. And then the other 2 that were in my fingers I'm going to get on the hook. And then I'm taking another band and it's going to slide through these 4 loops for the thumb. And then I'm also going to pull through the stitch. So it looks like I only made it through one. Make through both loops for the stitch. Then I'm grabbing the other end here, so I have my 3 loops on like I do for a regular single crochet, and then the one's going to slide through the other 2. And then I have just one left here, doing a regular single crochet, and then I'm going to just move my clip. For rows 6, 7, and 8, you can see I'm changing back to the skin tone, and there's a total of 8 bands in each of the rows. So let me just go ahead and do the first one with you. So I'm going to this next stitch over, and then again, since we are changing colors, you're going to have to do that slip stitch. So if you remember, you're going through the white that's on your hook, and then you're putting the other end back on and making a slip knot. And then for the rest of the row, it should be just one single crochet in each. It should be pretty straightforward. So now we're getting around the thumb part. Oops, I just lost it off my hook. Just get it right back on there. And you can see that we have 2 more stitches left to go through. And now the last one here has my clip. And I'm going to let you go ahead and finish the last 2 rows on your own, but I just want to point out again that since we did this slip stitch, you're going to see this like half white stitch and then a tiny little half beige or skin tone color stitch. Just make sure that you're not going through this small stitch, that you're going through the next stitch over. So this is the one you want to go through. And then you would just do your regular single crochet and then continue on. And now what I'm going to do is go 2 additional bands past where we ended. And the reason I'm doing that is just to make the arm a little bit taller on this top side here, so when it lays against the body it's not sticking straight out, that it has a little bit of an angle to it. So from where we left off, you're just going to this next stitch, and then one more, and then I'm just going to move my clip onto the end. When you've completed your first arm, you need to go ahead and make a second one. So again, I'm not going to film this, but I will add the time for you to go back to follow along with the tutorial again. For the magic ring, we're going to be using a total of 8 green bands. So again, I'm going to use my twisty tie, at least to get it started. So I'm tripling the first band. And then I have 7 more that I'm going to pull through the middle. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to go ahead and take this out just because it's going to get pretty full with the 7, and now I at least have something to grip onto. So now I'm going back through for the 6th, and then one more time, and you can spread that out, and then I'm going to attach a clip. In row 2, we're going to be doing 2 single crochet in each of the 7 stitches, so you need a total of 14 bands of whatever your color of your M&M is. So we're just going to the first one here and doing 2 single crochets. So that's 1, 2, and then you're just going to work your way around doing 2 in each stitch. And the reason why I'm doing 2 in every stitch is to really start getting this widened out right away, because we do want a pretty flat circular surface for the face of the M&M. And then I have my last set here. And then I'm going to just move the clip. So you can see how it's starting to form here. In the third row, you're going to need 21 bands, and we're following a pattern of 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, and so on. So you're doing just the single in the first stitch, and then 2 in the second stitch, and then you're just going to keep repeating that pattern. So this is another row that we're still increasing on, and we'll have several of those. When I was making my first prototype of this M&M, I actually had made it a couple rows bigger than what I am going to be showing you today. I just found that it got too large and used too many bands, and it would have taken a lot longer to film. So I made it just a little bit smaller. And I have 2 more sets here. So there's a single in the second to last stitch, and then at the very end here where your clip is, you're going to have 2 single crochets. For row 4, you'll need 26 bands, and the pattern we're following for this is 3 singles, and then 2, then again 3 more singles, and then 2. So again, we're still increasing here. So we'll do 1 single, and then move to the second stitch, and then another single. In the third stitch you have a single, and then in that fourth stitch we're going to have 2 single crochet. And now we're going to do 3 singles in the next 3 stitches. So that's 1, 2, and 3, and then in that next stitch you're going to have 2. So that's the first one, and back through for the second. And then we're on to the 3 singles. And then after that you have the 2 in the same stitch. And then 2 in the next. So you can see it's definitely starting to get bigger here. And then in that second to last stitch you're doing the double, or the 2 singles I should say. I don't like to say double because it's not like it's a double crochet. It's always a single crochet. There just happens to be 2 in the same stitch. And then in the very last one where your clip is, you should have 1 band left. And then we'll move that clip. For row 5, you'll need 33 bands, and we're following the pattern of 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, and so on. So in this first stitch, you're going to start with 2. So that's 1, and then a second, and then you're going to do 3 singles. So that's 1, 2, and 3, and then the next one's going to be 2 in the same stitch. So that's 1 and 2, and now we have 3 singles, and now 2, and then the 2. So hopefully by now everybody is feeling pretty comfortable with doing this. It definitely gets easier with practice, and you can increase your speed. The more comfortable you get, the quicker you can go. So I have 2 in this next one here. And then my 3. Getting sort of near the end here. And then in my last 2 stitches, I have 2 in the second to last stitch. And then finally at the end here, just 1 left. Row 6 is going to be the last row that we're going to have increases in, and you need a total of 40 rubber bands. And the main pattern is 2 and then 4 singles, but we're actually going to start with 2 singles, so it's a little bit different than normal. So I'm going to do my 2 singles. And the reason that I did it this way is to space out where the increases are, so they are not right on top of one another from this row to the previous row. So now in this next stitch I'm doing the 2. And now you're going to start the regular pattern for the rest of the row. So it's going to be 4 singles, and then you have your double or your 2 bands. And then there's the 4 single. And this next one will be 2. And let me just slide all of these up because I feel like my piece is going to hit them and knock them out of position. Now I have my 2. And I think I did get a little bit out of order here when I moved them. So I have the 4 singles, and then 2. And now I have my singles. And there's 1 stitch left, and I have 2 bands to go in it. In rows 7 and 8, you're going to need 40 bands for each of those rows, and it's going to be just 1 single crochet in each of the stitches. So since it's pretty straightforward, I'm going to go ahead and let you do those on your own, so you can pause the video here. Once you've completed one side of your M&M, you'll need to go back and repeat these steps again to make a second side. So I'm going to add the time to show you where to go back to follow along again. The next thing we're going to do is add the letter M, and you'll probably need anywhere from 14 to 18 bands for that, depending on how big you want your M to be. So the first thing you need to do is find the center point, and that should be easy to do. And then you probably want to go about 2 to 3 rows down from the center. And then you'll have to determine where on the circle it's going to be best to make the M. And you want to find a place where the rows are sort of in line with one another. You can see here, if I start right here, how the stitches, the holes in between the stitches sort of line up in a straight row. And it's not always the case. So you want to look at your M&M and see where you think you can have the best results. So I'm going to start right here. I'm going to place my hook and go down from the top to the bottom. I'm going to grab my first white band, and from underneath here I'm going to pull it up through. And then I'm going to go to this open area below here. Again, you want it to try and be as straight as possible. So I'm going to go to this next hole, and from underneath I'm going to get a hold of that other end of the band, pull it up through, and then one end will pull through the other. Then I'm going to go down through this same hole, and I'll pull up a second white band. And now again, I'm going to go to this open space below and put my hook down through. Going to pick up the other side of the white, pull it up, so you have the 3 loops on now, the same way we do a single crochet, and the one end will slide through the other 2. Then once again, I'm going to go down through that same hole, bring up the next band, and then I'm going to go down one more, put the other end on, pull that up through, and it looks like I caught a green here too, so I'm just going to release that, and then one end through the other 2. And now what I'm going to do is hold this loop that's on my hook in my fingers, and I'm just going to go below here, trying to keep in line. And as a matter of fact, I think that I'm going to go through the center here, just because I feel like if I went to one side or the other it wouldn't be totally in line. I'm going to grab this, pull it through to the back, and then I'm going to take an additional white band and I'll go through just 1 or 2 other loops here on the back, and then I'll pull this through all of those bands and make a nice tight slip knot. So now you can see here we have the one line, and there is a little bit of wiggle room that you can try and adjust this if you think it doesn't look 100% straight. So now what we're going to do is start at the top here, and we're going to form that first hump. So I'm going to start in this stitch, not at the very top, but the next one down. So I'll put my hook through here, pull up my next white band, and let me just take my hook out for a minute so I can show you here. I think the next spot I'm going to go is up and to the right a little bit. So let me just get this back on my hook, and I'm going to push down through, grab the other end of it, and I think I lost it there. Let me just do that again. Get the other end, pull one through the other. Again, I'm going to hold this sideways. And now what I'm going to do is come down through this next stitch. It's sort of diagonally down and to the left. I'm going to pull up my next white band, and then I'm going to follow this straight over to the left here, and then pull up the white. One end slides through the other 2. So it is a little bit challenging, or at least it can be, because you're sort of working a little bit blindly. It's a little bit more by feel. And then I'm going to go down through that same hole, pull up my next band, and then again I'm going to come straight down, pull up the loop, and again here you can see I've hooked a green and I don't want it to be, so let me just take this off and get my hook out of that green, and now I have just the whites, and one pulls through the other 2. And now again I'm going to hold this in my fingers, and I'm going to come up through. Again, I think I'm going to come up through the center in between the 2 green bands here, and pull this white through to the back. And then once again I'm going to go through some on the back, and then I'll take another white band and make another slip knot. So you can see how you think that looks, and of course if you don't like the positioning, you can always go ahead and move these. So I think that's looking relatively straight. And now I have to make the last hump here. And I want it to come up through this spot here, but I can see that this is sort of pulling to the left, and it left sort of a kind of gaping spot there. So what I'm actually going to do is go to the left side of these bands, the white bands, sort of pull that over, and then go down through, just so that is drawn more over to the right. Going to come up through. Try not to get hung up on any other bands. And then I'm going to, let me just take my hook out so I can look here. I think if I come straight over here it's going to be a little bit too low, and I'm afraid if I go up here it's going to be a little bit too high. So I think I'm going to try and go sort of in between these two open areas. So let me just get this back on my hook. And I'm going to go, as I said, sort of in between those two areas, down in between the green bands. And then I'm going to pull the white up through. So let me just see if I like the way that that looks. And I think it looks pretty good. So I'm going to leave it like that. So now I'm going down through the same one. Pull up my next, and again I want to parallel these and come pretty straight down, so I'm not quite sure. You can see how these stitches kind of go in or up from the way I'm holding it now. They go up, so I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to follow this open line here, so I'm going to have to go in between a little bit. So let me just come down to this one, but sort of go in between the green. The thing is, when you force it down in between, it's always a lot harder to pull up through because you're catching a lot of bands you don't want. And then let me go back down through. And I'm going to come down here. And I just lost it, but I'm going to get it right back on. And then again, I'm going down through the same opening, pulling up my next band, and I have to get this green to go over top there. And then I want to come below this, and I'll pull up the other side. And then let me hold this in my fingers, and let me just double check and make sure I like the looks of that. And I think it looks pretty good. So I'm just going to go down below here, and again I'm going to go in between the green, pull this down through, and one more time I'm going to grab some of these bands on the back and make a slip knot. Nice and tight. And so it does sort of bend your circle here in a little bit, but you can play around with it and work itself so the bands aren't denting it in there. And once you get the stuffing in, it won't be like that either. So here's the M we made, and as I said, you have a little bit of wiggle room if you want to try and squeeze these whites together, if you think there's too much green showing through. For the mouth, you'll need somewhere between 14 and 18 bands, give or take a few. Really depends on what style mouth you're making and the size of the mouth. So I'm going to be doing the girl lips, and let me show you an example of the first one that I had done. This one's a little bit bigger of an M&M than what we're making, but this is the mouth pattern I used, and I think it came out really good. So I'm going to try and mirror that. And if you're doing the boy mouth, that I used the black rubber bands, and you can see how I just made sort of a crooked smile on this one, because if you look at the red M&M, that's the type of mouth that he has. So it just depends on what you're looking for. Of course, you can totally come up with your own mouth. So I'm going to start in the center here, and I'm going to be doing it the same way that I did the M. So I'm just going down through this middle. I'm going to pull up my first band, and I want it to angle upwards and to the left, so I'm going to go down through this next one, pull it up, and then one will go through the other. And then I'm going to go down through the same one, and I want it to come up through, and then I'm going down through again, angling up and to the left. And I need to pull this band up, and one slides through the other two. And now I want to work my way gradually down here. So again, going through the same one, and this time I'm going to come down and to the left. And then let me do that again. So as you're forming this, you can see how the bands are going, and you can see if you like how it's looking. And if not, you can change it along the way. Now from here, I want to go up and to the left a little bit, just to give a little hint of a smile. And then I'm going to work my way around to do the bottom lip. And let me just see if I like that. Seems a little bit pulling down towards the bottom, but I think it'll be alright. Just working my way over now. I think I'll go down a little bit on this one. And now over. And over again. Whoops, I forgot I have to go back down through the same one. It's easy to forget that, so don't forget to go through the same one first, then move over. And don't worry if your M&M looks caved in. My M's sort of looking pushed in right now, but as I said, it'll straighten out once you get the stuffing in. So let me just turn it around here and see how it's looking. So I think I'm going to work my way up here now. And I'll come up again. I'm always flipping it back around so I can see if I like the way it's turning out. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually end this here, just because if I try to work my way back, I think it's going to pull this and I'm not going to like how it turns out. So let me just make sure that it looks like it's pretty even. I'm actually going to go up to get that little bit of a smile look. So I'll just pinch this in my fingers and go up from underneath to where I want it to end. Pull it to the back. I'm going to make my slip knot here, so go through a couple on the back and tie this off. And now I'm going to repeat this from the center. I'm going to go out, up, and then come back down and meet this. So I'm going to try and make it look the same on both sides. So the first one is working its way diagonally up and to the right. Going back down through the same hole. And the next one's coming up and to the right. And then I'm going back down through the same one here. And this time I'm going to go to the one below. And then it looks like I just need to finish this off here. So I'm going to hold this in my fingers and I'm going to come up through. Pull this band down through. And then again I need to tie this off. For the eyebrows, I'll be using 8 black rubber bands, and then for the eyes, I found these really cute green wiggly eyes. They have the eyelashes already on. I can show you what that package looks like. And so you may want to take your eyes and put them on, just so you can get an idea of where you want the eyebrows to be. But you can see that they're going to wind up being pretty close to the top here. So I'm going to just find the center point, and I'm going to go to not the very end, but maybe the next row up, and I'll just go over like 1 or 2 stitches, and that's where I'll place my eyebrows, at least the one side. So normally we've been going down through the top and pulling the bands up, but what I'm going to do for the eyebrows is the opposite. I'm going to come up through the bottom, just because I want the skinnier part to be showing. So I'm going to pull this down through, and then from the back I'm going to move to that next open space over, grab the band and pull it through to the back, and slide one in through the other, and then I'm going up through that same stitch. I'll pull down my second one, and again I'll just work my way over, following the path here. And then the one pulls through the other 2, and then I'm going to do one more where I'm pulling it through to the back, and then coming up through, one through the other 2, and then I need to tie this off. And then I can take a look and see if I like her eyebrows with where the eye's going to be, and I think it looks good. So now I'm going to repeat that on the other side here. The next thing that I'm going to do is attach these 2 halves together, and I'm not going to do anything with my eyes because I just have these Google eyes that I'm going to glue on at the very end. But if you are doing something with eyes that need to attach, like if you made them out of bands and you're going to attach them, you would want to do that now before you sew these 2 halves together. So let me just turn these over, and I want to line up where the loose stitches where we had ended. So I'm going to pull this as if it was continuing around. I'm going to get the one end on my hook, the loose part, and then I'm going to go through this next stitch. So I'm going to wind up with 3 loops on my hook here, and then I'm going to take the other side and I'm going to go through the last stitch here before where this loose band is. So I'm going to go through that. So let me get this clip out of the way here. So I have 5 loops on my hook to start. Taking a band, I'm going to pull it through all of the bands, get it back on, so I have just the 2 loops, and 1 will go through the other 2. So that's the pattern I'm going to be following for the whole thing. I'm doing the same thing as if I was making a slip stitch. So again, I'm moving to the next stitch over, going in through from the back side, and then I will go over to the next one. Just make sure you're not going through the one you already have gone through. You're going to this next stitch over. Now I'm taking another band and I'm pulling through all on my hook. Just like when you do a slip stitch, you're getting them all off, putting the other end back on so you have just the 2 loops instead of the normal 3 when you do single crochet, and 1 through the other 2. So that's all I'm going to do the whole way around. And if you're ever questioning whether you went through a stitch or not because you can't tell, if you look to the back side, it's much easier to tell if you've gone through that or not. So I can see I went through this one, so I'm going to the next one over. And then I'm going to this next stitch on the other side, getting another band to pull through all, back on, and 1 through the other 2. So it really is pretty easy, especially if you've made it this far by making all of these pieces. It should be a breeze. So I'm just going to the next stitches, pulling through all, and then 1 band through the other. So I'm just going to continue in this same pattern, and I'll do a couple more, and then I'm going to wind up fast forwarding just for the sake of time. And then when I get towards the end, I'm going to leave the last several stitches open, so it's going to be big enough for me to stuff. Now I have about 5 stitches left, but before I close this off, I'm going to put my polyfill in. So you just want to take smaller sections of it. It's actually pretty much fill you want to put in it, but I like to do smaller sections at a time. And you know what, I'm going to take a clip and put it on this and take my hook out, just so it's not in the way of me working here for the moment. That way I can sort of hold this open. So you don't want to stuff it so full that you see the stuffing sticking out in between the open areas, but at the same time you definitely want to have it fairly full so it makes a nice rounded shape. And also here where the M is, you don't want it to be caving in, or where the lips are. So you can just use your best judgment on how full it needs to be, and you can push it down where you think it needs to be a little bit fuller. So now I'm just going to finish this off here. So I'm going to get this back on my hook and take out the clip. And then I'm going to just go through the next stitch. And you're probably going to have to use your finger to push that fluff down, because you don't want it to get intertwined in your rubber bands. And now the next one. So it looks like I have 3 bands left here, And we are going to have to account for this loose loop when we get up a little bit further here. So it looks like we have 2 left here. And I am going to attach this loop in the next one, so I can take off my clip. And then I also need to go through the other side of the stitch. And then it looks like that was our last one, so we just need to tie this off, and I have 1 band left. So I'm going to go through and make a slip knot, nice and tight, and I'm going to have to hide this loop inside, so I'm just going to reach through here and pull this in. The next thing that I'm going to do is attach the legs and the arms. So I have 4 anchor bands for each one of those, so a total of 16. And then I did put some polyfill in the arms and legs already, so you can go ahead and do that now. And then what I'm going to do is take 3 of the anchor bands and make slip knots. So what I'm going to do is pinch this together, and you can see we have this loose band here that the clip is on. So let me just take that off, and the way that this would go around here is it would be moving over to the left. So I'm going to take my hook and put that through there, and I'm going to go to this next stitch over and go through from the back here, go through those 2 loops, and then when I pinch this together I'm going to go to the one that's straight across from it, take one of my anchor bands, pull through all of these loops, get the other end back on, and make a slip knot. So I don't want to pull this super tight, but I want it to be tight enough that it's going to stay while I'm attaching this. And then that looks like it's basically in the middle here. So I'm going to go to this next stitch over the back side, the one on the left, and then through the stitch on the front as well. It doesn't look like I made it through them all. Let me just stretch this out a minute so I can see what I'm doing. So now I'm going to pull this next band through and again make a second slip knot. And then over here to the right, I'm going to do it one more time. So I want to go through the 2 stitches, pulling this 3rd anchor band through, and making a slip knot. So I have my 3 slip knots here, and they already look like they're wanting to come loose. And now I need to attach this onto the main body part. So I'm going to find the middle here, and then I want to go slightly over to the right. So from the back I'm going to put my hook through this end stitch, and I'm going to grab the band from the left hand side and pull it through to the back. I'm going to leave that on my hook, and I'm going to push through the next one. Again, I'm going to grab the middle band, and that's going to pull through to the back, and then I'm going to push through the next stitch and grab the end band and pull that through to the back. So I have all 3 loops here on my hook. I'm going to take my last anchor band, I'm going to go through all 3 and make a nice tight slip knot. So you can see it's attached on here now. So now I just need to hide this loop. So if you want, you can just wrap it around the beige a couple of times, Or if you wanted, you could wrap it around the green, if you want to stick your hook through the green and pull it around here. So it's up to you how you want to hide it. And then we're going to do that same thing for the left leg. So you can pause your video here and attach your other leg. Now I'm ready to attach the arm, and it's going to go the same way here. So from the back side here, I'm going to go through a back stitch. I'm going to also go through this loop, take off the clip, and go through a front stitch. Take another band and pull through. So it is a little bit tougher to get through. You might have to use your fingers and pull down to get through all of these. And then grab the other end and make that slip knot. Now I'm going to go through a middle stitch, front and back, and then finally one towards the right here. And now I'm going to see where I want this to attach. And then I'm coming through from the back. And it looks like my slip knot did come apart here. But that's not a problem. We'll just get both ends on and pull one through the other to make that slip knot again. And then pull that through to the back. And now I'm going to the next stitch down. And I'll pull through my middle one, and then the next stitch down below that, pull through the bottom, and let me see if I like the position, and I think it looks pretty good, so I'm going to attach my slip knot here at the end, nice and tight, and then I'm going to hide it. And then I'm just going to repeat this for the other side, so I'm not going to show this. I'm going to let you go ahead and do that one on your own. I'm now ready to attach the eyes, and I've placed them where I think I want them to go. And I'm going to be using a hot glue gun, so if you are a child, please ask your parent for help with this part. You could use other forms of glue, although I don't know how good they would hold on, which is why I'm choosing to use the hot glue gun. So I'm just going to take one of the eyes and get a nice amount of glue all around. And then I'm going to stick it on. And you want to double check if you like the way that it looks before the glue totally sets up here. Sorry, I have a bunch of glue strings hanging. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other eye. Still have a bunch more glue strings here. And then your little M&M is complete. I hope that everyone loves their new little M&Ms. You can always leave me comments on YouTube and Facebook, post pictures of your creations to my Facebook page, and please feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can stay up to date on my latest tutorials. You can also find me on Pinterest and Instagram, so please feel free to subscribe to those as well. Thanks for watching!